Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining. I'm going to go ahead and get started here. I have a ton of content, today. So I'm going to start now and hopefully we'll get through all of it and have plenty of time for questions at the end. So our topic for tonight is, well, today, where you are, essential networking strategies for MBAs. In other words, how to make real professional friendships. And this term professional friendships is really important because the first thing I'm going to be inviting you guys to do is to shift your perspective on networking and possibly even get rid of that term altogether. So here's my logo. Here's the slogan of Career Protocol. Work is supposed to be fun. Everything, I think, life is too short to not have fun at work. And everything we're going to be talking about today is really centered around making your work life more meaningful and more fun because, let's be honest, people are a huge driver of that. So here is a very short bullet point bio of me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Angela Guido. I got my MBA at Booth. I worked at BCG for several years after my MBA, including a stint as a recruiter at BCG. And then I've been a career coach for the last 10 years, helping people get into business school and get the internships and the jobs that they want while they were in business school. And I think the most important things for our purposes today are these three right here. So I'm bringing to this conversation my experience being on the other side, being on the buying side of MBAs. So at BCG, part of my role was to help recruit more amazing people for the firm. And I went around to all of the top business schools and led workshops and participated in recruiting events. So I've been on the other side of where you're sitting. I've also been in your shoes because I had to go through that to get into BCG in the first place. But I've been on the other side, and I understand how companies are looking at you as potential hires during your MBA. And then I also want to point out this last thing here, which is that I'm an introvert. So if you've heard me speak before, and by the end of tonight, you'll understand that I manage public speaking pretty well, but that belies a very serious social awkwardness that sometimes comes out when I am at networking events. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is it's not just about being a more effective networker for the purposes of getting the internship or job that you want post MBA. It's really about making this process much more enjoyable for you, even if you're someone like me who just really hates networking. And the unifying theme to everything I do is that I'm a student of human nature. I think we really have to work with our own innate nature if we want to achieve and maximize our potential. So that thread will be permeating this presentation. And what I do now, like I said, I'm a career coach and I help people achieve their goals and have more fun at work. So for the last 11 years, I've helped thousands of people to get into, dream schools and get into dream companies. And so, I've worked with a lot of people who are exactly where you are. And I always like to start by saying that I just love MBAs. I mean, I have an MBA myself, but that's not why I love MBAs. I love MBAs because for the most part, you guys are pursuing this pretty expensive, if we're honest, pretty expensive advanced degree because you have a goal to have an impact in your career. Most people who are going to business school, you want more prestigious positions, you want to make more money. Of course, everyone wants those things. But most of you are also doing it because you want your career to really matter. And the MBA is really great for that. And it's been a real joy for me for more than a decade to work with people who are focused on having their work life matter to them and to the world. So everything I'm talking about today is really designed to help you find more meaning and joy in your career. So here's our agenda. We're going to talk a little bit about your future. We're going to talk about why we all hate networking. Maybe some of you don't. We'll see. We're going to take a poll in a minute. And then I'm going to walk you through a set of tools to build professional friendships. I'll give you a few quick words about YOMO. I'll tell you what that is later. And then I'll take whatever questions you guys have. So if you missed the webinar that I led last week or 2 weeks ago, called The 7 Deadly Myths of MBA Recruiting, I strongly encourage you guys to check it out. It's on the Poets and Quants YouTube channel. I went through all of the things that I wish I had known when I was going into recruiting for my summer internship at business school, and gave you some really concrete tips and tools to begin to prepare for that challenge, because it's coming really, really fast. I'll say a little bit more about this at the end today, but just a quick pitch for that webinar if you missed it. It's different from this. But one of the things that I did talk about in that webinar is this quote from Heraclitus, that change is the only constant. And so as an MBA, you've stood up and you've said, I want to lead, I want to manage, I want to be a leader of consequence in my career. And one of the things that almost guarantees for you is that you are going to change jobs, not once, not twice, but up to 3 or more times in the next 10 years alone. So this is from a GMAC study from a few years ago. They looked at MBAs post-degree, and they found that on average, MBAs are taking 3 jobs in 10 years. I actually had more than that in 10 years, as did many of my peers. And this is just the nature of what it means to have goals. You're not someone who just wants to get a desk job and sit there until you retire. You're always going to be reaching for the next opportunity that's bigger and better and allows you to grow and have a bigger impact. And that means that you're going to change jobs many, many times. You're entering a really big pivot in your MBA, but it's not the last one you're ever going to make. So, in sticking with the human nature theme, if you think about how you tend to feel about change, even when it's a little bit, of course it can be exciting, but to some extent, all of us really, when it comes to change, it's like, we go back to being 2 years old when, our parents, send us to school for the first time. It's traumatic. So, part of what relationships can do is make sure that as you go through this experience of change after change after change, it doesn't feel so much like this, but it's more like you can enjoy it and it's exciting. And relationships and your network are a big part of what's going to create that experience for you. But again, we're all human, so we got to work with our human nature. This is the only way that we can minimize our suffering in this process. So if you joined the other webinar, you heard me touch on these 4 keys to work-life success. And this is just the framework that I use with all of my clients, whether they're applying to business school or applying to their dream jobs. If you're able to do these 4 things well, consistently, and repeatedly throughout your career, you're going to have a great life. You need to be able to understand yourself. You need to be able to make confident choices. You need to communicate brilliantly, and you need to nurture relationships. These are kind of the 4 pillars to active career management or work-life success. And of course, the focus for today is relationships. Networking is ultimately all about nurturing real relationships. I love this quote from Alfred North Whitehead: "No one who achieves success does so without the help of others." And, it sounds like a cliche. I know it is. But if you think about it, you probably sometimes forget this. It's easy to forget that in general in life, you're really only getting ahead because many other people are laying a path for you, pulling you up, supporting you, giving you advice, mentoring you. So you're never really alone. This is an important thing to remember when you're feeling like the world is on your shoulders and there's no one you can turn to. You're never really alone. But it's also really important for you to embrace this idea proactively, because the more you are effective at embracing and utilizing the support of others, the farther you will go much, much, much faster. This is highly scientific chart that I really love, which basically explains why relationships are going to become more and more important post-MBA than they've ever been before. Most of you, and I'm going to quickly check in with you guys and see where you are in your careers. I think most of you are going to business school this fall. But for the most part, you got into business school because of your abilities and your achievements, because of your innate qualities, your character, your resume, the things you did in college, your grades, and your GMAT. It's the blue line on this chart. But the further you go in your career, the less the resume and your scores and grades matter, and the more your relationships determine how far you can go. And this is true no matter what work you seek to do post-MBA. You will always only be able to go as far as the people around you are willing to have you go. The best opportunities 2 to 5 years post-MBA aren't even going to be the ones that are posted online. If you want to make some really interesting and exciting transitions, it's your network that's going to create those opportunities for you. So keep this in mind, really now and always. This is a picture I wish I had immediately post-MBA. I really didn't figure this out until much later, and frankly, the hard way. But another thing that hopefully I don't have to convince you of is that relationships are really part of what makes work awesome. I mean, if you think back to your favorite work experiences, chances are it's because you were with an amazing team. You had an amazing boss, and there were people that you felt genuine camaraderie with, working towards a shared goal. Like, that's a big part of where we go from, working to live and living to work, where we come to really, really love what we're doing. So can't overstate the importance of relationships, really. But let's talk about networking, because networking isn't the same thing as relationships. At least in our minds, it's been mapped to something entirely different for most of us. So let's do a quick poll here. I'm going to launch this poll. Let me get a sense from you guys how you feel about networking. So take a quick moment. Hopefully you can see the poll there. And let me know how you feel. Do you hate it? Do you love it? Or are you somewhere in between? And keep in mind, I haven't even really defined what networking means. But for the most part, you're probably going to be thinking of, this, going to events and collecting business cards and talking to people and this kind of thing. This is really only the first step of networking. But for now, let's see how we feel about that. Okay. So we got a range here. We got a couple of people who love it. I'm going to share the poll. So the mode answer was, I like it if I'm in the mood. There probably should have been a the in the mood. Okay, but anyway, you got the point. You like it if you're in the mood. But really, the majority of you are lukewarm to hating it. And then we got a few people who really love it. And that's great. Hopefully all of you will move down 1 or 2 notches on this poll after today, after you learn what I'm going to share with you guys and start implementing some of these lessons. I really hope that you're going to go from hating it or like dreading it to at least being able to love it when you're in the right mood. As an introvert, I can't say that I love it 100%. I got to be in the mood. But when I'm in the mood, I've come to really love networking. And it's because of this new and different approach that I'm going to talk about right now. So why do we hate networking? And if you're like most people, you are, and you guys are, you're pretty representative. Most people don't love it. And so here's the answer. I'm just going to tell you what I really think is the answer. You hate networking if you hate it. And even those of you who love it, the times that you hate it because it makes you feel bad. It makes you feel one of 2 kinds of bad. It makes you either feel like you're being judged, like you're surrounded by important people and you're just this small little person who has to try to impress them, and you've got to measure up and really make an impression. And that frankly just doesn't ever feel good because it makes you feel judged. It's an orientation towards the world that says, I'm not good enough. I need the validation of someone else to show me that I'm okay. This never feels good. The other thing that it might make you feel is manipulative, because most of us embrace networking really only when we need something, when we need a job or we need a contact or we need a favor. And to go into networking with that intention inherently is manipulative and therefore will feel manipulative. And human beings do not like to judged or manipulative. This is inherent. These approaches are never going to feel good to you. But the thing is that your perspective is ultimately what shapes your experience. It's what gives you your feelings. So if the current paradigm for networking disempowers you, and I would argue that the current paradigm, like most of what we're taught, most of what people say when they talk about networking, is very transactional. It's based on getting what you want from other people while still not coming off as a jerk. So most of the advice is centered around still getting what you want, but just not seeming like you're trying to get what you want, actually seeming like you're a good person while ultimately getting what you want. This paradigm never worked for me. This is part of why I hated networking during business school. It made me feel really needy and judged and, again, manipulative. So if the current paradigm doesn't work for you, then I recommend that you change your context. And you have complete control over your own perspective, over how you view a situation or a series of actions or your circumstances. So let me give you a really specific example of exactly what I mean. So how many of you are going to this networking festival in New York? Just type in the chat box or raise your hand. You can communicate with me if you look in the membership area. Yeah, you can raise your hand. Cool. Most of you have figured out that raise your hand tool. Excellent. Okay. So cool. Most of you, yeah, at least over half of you have already raised your hands. You're going to this event. Fantastic. Okay. So a lot of you are going to this event. So very good. And if you're not going to this event, you're going to some event in the future that will resemble this event, where you're going to be getting together with a bunch of other people more or less like you and trying to build connections. So I recommend that you, instead of thinking of conferences, this is just one of many conferences you're going to attend in the next years of your life. Instead of thinking of conferences as a chance to network, think of them as a chance to make new friends. This already should decrease the stress level for many of you. And if you think about networking, really all it is making new friends. It's just how we make friends as adults. When we were kids, we used to do it on the playground or in the cafeteria. And as adults, since we don't go to the playground, most of us, and since we don't all eat in the same cafeteria, we need to go to specific events to make new friends. So think of conferences, think of networking events, not as networking events, but rather as a chance to make new friends. And now let's play this idea out all the way to the end. Let's forget the whole idea of networking. All we're doing here is making professional friends. And how are we going to do that? Well, let me give you 3 steps here, 3 tools to change your mindset about networking. I'm going to go through these one at a time. So the first thing to keep in mind is that job searching and networking are not the same thing. So really simply put, this is the wrong time to network. Okay. So if you are, pursuing new relationships because you are in a position where you need to get a job and you need to get a job fast, it's not going to be a great experience for you or them. So if you're working to build new relationships only when you need a job, you're going to be in fear and survival mode. So most of you guys are in at business school, and you're going to be starting business school in the next 6 months or so, a little bit less than 6 months probably for most of you. And right now, the world is your oyster. You haven't started school yet. The pressure of recruiting is not yet upon you. Some of you are going to take nice long vacations. This is the best time to build professional friendships because you don't need anything. You're able to just connect with people and build genuine friendships, not based on an agenda or a need. Because when you network at a time when you are desperate for work, it's going to just feel icky. It may go okay. you may still succeed, but it's not going to feel as good if you're networking in, say, March for your summer internship that you didn't get when everyone else got in February. It's going to feel a lot worse than if you do it now before you even get to campus and before you've even maybe made some serious decisions about what you're going to do. So I recommend that you embrace the mindset that you're building relationships now and always, so that they're there to support you when you do need to make a career move. Because friendships are the kind of thing that, you can't ask someone you just met to hire you. You need to have a background of relationships. So now is the time to begin building and strengthening your relationships so that when you do need someone to vouch for you in a hiring situation, they are there for you. So here's some Monday morning actions. These are some things you can do. You can do these today, or if you want to wait until next Monday morning. This is a BCG concept. What's the CEO going to do differently on Monday morning after this conversation? So here's what I recommend you guys do. Take time now to really strengthen your existing relationships. So before you leave your job for the summer, before you travel, before you go to your MBA, take time to reconnect with meaningful colleagues. Take them out to lunch, take them out to coffee, thank them, especially the people who recommended you for business school, but really anyone who's mentored you or helped you on your road. Really take time to thank them. Let them know about your next steps. Let them know where you're headed, what you're planning, what you don't know. If you're still not sure what you want to do for the summer, it's a good time to talk to people about what you think you might be interested in, and then ask them to connect you to anyone they know who could be helpful in your next step. You'd be surprised how many people you already know, even in your current job, but also from your broader network, who are only 1 degree away of someone who might be your next boss or might work for the firm that you want to work for in your internship. And now is really the time to start building these relationships. So I recommend that you guys do this before you leave your jobs. And I just realized that I have a really great blog post about this. Let me see if I can find it, about what to do before you quit before you quit your job. Okay, I'm not finding it. I'll try to post that at the end. It's also on Poets and Quants, by the way. There's like a whole series of steps you can go through. But don't limit this to just your coworkers. You want to also do this with old friends, with fellow alumni from college, with people you used to work with. This is a really good time because you don't need anything. This is a good time to reconnect with them and say, hey, just want to let you know I'm going to business school. It's kind of exciting. If they know anything about it, you can ask for their advice. If they have an MBA themselves, or maybe they're thinking about it, you can give them advice. And then again, ask them to connect you to anyone they know who could be helpful in your next step. Take time to do this now, and before the end of the week, you'll have 5 or 6 or more new connections that you can hold informational interviews with, which I'll say a little bit about in a few minutes. But do all this now. Now's the time to do this, not when you get to campus. When you get to campus, you're going to be so busy, you're going to be so stressed, you're going to have so much to do. You're not going to have time to think about anyone who's not, sitting right next to you or sitting right in front of you. So take the time to do this now, and do it before you really enter the recruiting gauntlet. Okay, so the second step to change your mindset is that building friendship is not a transaction. This is the trickiest one for all of us, because for the most part, as you are going into business school, you're entering a very, very needy phase of your life. You're not going to have an income, most of you. You're going to be a student, and you're going to have a lot of questions that you need to get answered. There's a lot of places where you're going to need help and support, and you're on a quest to find your next job, which is going to be a competitive process. If you thought getting into business school was competitive, just wait till you see what internship recruiting looks like. So you're entering a phase where you're going to really need a lot from your network, from your friends, from your family, and from your colleagues. You're going to need a lot of support. And so it's going to be very easy to default into this mindset that relationships or your network is transactional. It's to do something for you, or maybe you have a tit for tat idea. You'll do something for them, they'll do something for you, but that's still a transaction. Friendship exists outside of the transaction paradigm. So think of networking events. It's very easy to think about this as an occasion to go in, find out who the 2 or 3 important people are, get their card, make sure that they have a good impression of you, and then peace out. It's very easy to think of networking events this way, especially because you're going to be going to a lot of them during your MBA when there's a lot of other things competing for your attention. But let's go back to this idea that you're building professional friendships. And so here's the anatomy of a friendship. If you think about every friendship you've ever had, it followed this framework. There was a connection. In other words, you met somewhere. Maybe it was on the playground. Maybe it was at a coffee shop. Maybe it was at a work training. But you met somewhere and there was a connection. In other words, you looked at each other and you thought, I want to talk to this person again. It wasn't just like every person you meet in a given day. It was someone that you wanted to stay connected to. There was a connection. Then there was a future. In other words, the relationship didn't end with the hello at Starbucks. There was a next step that took you from a meeting to a future. And then you've got shared positive experiences. People you've known longer have more shared positive experiences. All of your relationships are based on the experiences that you share with the people you know and the connections you share with the people you know. So another feature of a network and of great friendships is that there are shared connections. If you think about your closest friends, chances are they also know several other people in your network. You have a lot of mutual friends. This is a feature of strong relationships and of a network. So how do we use this in our networking endeavors? Well, the first thing you want to understand is that all great relationships start with a very positive connection. There's genuine human connection there. You look the person in the eye and you recognize we're both human. We have something in common, even if it's nothing superficial, but we're both people and we want to know each other. So how do you make a connection with a stranger? This is kind of a dumb question, but for some reason, when we get into networking events, all of our common wisdom and common sense kind of flies out the window. So type in the chat box, how do you make a connection with a stranger? How do you make this genuine human connection so that there's a sense of recognition of like, here we both are, we like each other, we see each other? How do you do that? You all know how to do this, by the way. This is your birthright. Okay, some interesting answers here. We have say hi. That works. Find something you both have in common. That also works, but it's tricky because it can be like hunting for a needle in a haystack. Introduce yourself. We have LinkedIn. I would argue that LinkedIn doesn't do this at all. Actually, the internet has really damaged our ability to make connection because it's pretty hard to do it in just text on a computer screen. There needs to be a human element to it, and that's not easy to do in email. By being yourself, by showing your quirks and uniqueness, by asking them to join a conversation, giving them a compliment. Okay, good. So you guys are giving some great examples. Let me boil it down to one concept, and that is really just to create a positive interaction. It's that simple. You want to have a positive interaction as the foundation of everything that follows. And you know how to do this. There's an infinite number of ways you can do this, and you guys just named several, okay? Smiling. I mean, smiling goes a surprisingly long way. Smiling is a really big one. You can share a joke. You can find a common interest, discover a friend in common, learn something new together, engage in a lively dialogue, share genuine emotion, be yourself while the other person listens. This is a very short list, but there's hundreds, if not millions of things you can do to create a positive interaction in a first contact, even at a networking event, even in the constraint of being at a networking event. Now, like I said, this was really obvious, okay? You guys all know this stuff. I'm not telling you anything new, but it's really important, I think, to remember that you already know how to do this. So when you go to networking events, you don't have to be any way than how you already are, because as a human being, you innately know how to connect with your fellow humans. It's hardwired into your DNA. So this already makes life a little bit easier because you don't have to put on any pretenses. You don't even have to worry about impressing people. All you have to do is think about, how do I make this a positive experience for myself and the people around me? And if you make that your governing thought at a networking event, you're already going to have a lot more success than your average classmate will. There's a moment in the networking flow of conversations, typically, where you're going to need to introduce yourself. And a lot of people do this in ways that are really, really wrong. But I'm going to give you a framework that I think is going to make this a lot easier for you. So if you think about ways to create positive interactions, there's one surefire way that always works in conversation. This is something I want you to test out. I'm going to tell you what the answer is, but I encourage you guys to test this out over the next week. Try bringing enthusiasm to a conversation that you're having with a stranger and just see what happens. Just watch what happens when you get enthusiastic, genuinely enthusiastic about something in the company of others, and see what happens. What you're going to find is that enthusiasm is contagious. It always, always works to create a positive experience for the people around you. So if you think about what you're enthusiastic about, these are the things that you want to bring with you to a networking event as topics of conversation. And it's important to recognize that, especially if you're at a networking event milling around and there's a bunch of people and you're all having, you're all engaged in chit chat, you don't have to talk about work. In fact, it's much more likely that the conversation will be better if you don't talk about work. You can really talk about anything that you're enthusiastic about. So one of the things I tell my clients to do before they go to a networking event is to make a list of things that they love, of things that matter to them, of things they're curious about today, and of things that they're aiming for, things that they want. So go in with this list of things that you're kind of occupied with in your current life. And this will give you lots of great fodder for conversation with absolutely anyone. And again, these don't have to be limited to work. So things that you love could be things like travel, cheese, gourmet cooking, wine, golf, sports. You have the things that you really love. And these are always great topics of conversation at networking events. But importantly, like I said, you never have to talk about work, but there typically will come this moment where someone turns to you and says, "So what do you do?" And you're going to have to give an answer that I recommend leverages enthusiasm. So I have another blog post, which I won't necessarily subject you to. I'll just tell you the punchline right here. It's death to the elevator pitch. You're going to hear a lot of people tell you that you need an elevator pitch. You need to be able to sell yourself in 30 seconds. And I just think this is insane, because as a human being, you just really should never be selling yourself. That's just wrong on so many levels, and it feels bad. I've never known anyone who felt really good giving an elevator pitch. And the other problem with the elevator pitch is that you run the risk of using it at the wrong moment, because when you're in a group interaction, that is not the moment to introduce yourself and kind of try to sell yourself. The moment to really let someone know what you do and who you are is this moment right here, when it's one-on-one and someone is actually asking you, "So who are you? What do you do?" Or, that's the appropriate thing to do because you're talking to someone in a more intimate context rather than with a whole group who's talking about, where they went for vacation last summer. So here's a way to introduce yourself that I think is going to feel a lot better than a classic elevator pitch. And you want to introduce yourself by talking about something you love, something that matters to you, something you're curious about, or something that you want at work. So you apply these concepts, you kind of uncover your values at work and use this to introduce yourself. So take a moment and think about the stuff that you love in your work. For some of you, it's, analysis. You like working with data. You like solving problems. For others of you, it's mentoring people and helping them grow and develop. Sometimes it has to do with the industry you're in or the function. But think about, what do you genuinely love about the work that you've been doing so far? And then you want to use time to organize yourself as you discuss what you love about your work, past, present, and future. So let me show you what this could look like. So this is an example of how I might have, of course, I didn't do this back in my day, but if I had, if I had this tool when I was in business school, this is how I might have introduced myself. I would have said something like this. So far in my career, I've focused on human development. First, I was a teacher. Then I was a strategic human resources manager. And what I love about my work is helping people grow by aligning organizational structure to create efficiency and learning opportunities. It's just what really excited me in everything that I did up until now. So after my MBA, I'm really hoping to join a consulting firm so that I can impact organizations across a variety of industries and continue learning about business and organizational structures myself. So this is 30 seconds or fewer. And it gives me the chance, it gives you the chance to help someone get to know you on the basis of something that is genuinely meaningful and important to you. It's not about being impressive. It's about being open and honest and sharing. This is what makes a genuine human connection. And this is what will always create a positive interaction. If you are trying to impress someone, there's a good chance that you're going to come off as manipulative or salesy or much worse words that I'll spare you on this public webinar. But when you share something that you love, people can't help but be interested, because one thing we all have in common is that we love stuff. We're enthusiastic about the things that we're enthusiastic about. And I may not be enthusiastic about what you're enthusiastic about, but I will enjoy experiencing your enthusiasm vicariously as you share what it is that you do love. So try this out. Make a genuine human connection by introducing yourself based on your true values. All right, and finally, hello does not equal goodbye. This is probably obvious, but I'm going to give you some really concrete tools that are going to make the process of converting a hello into a real friendship a whole lot easier. This is where most people somehow manage to, build relationships at the right time and even get the transaction out of the relationships. But then where things typically fall down for almost all of us is in the conversion from we met someone, but then the connection falls off a cliff. We never hear from them again. We end up with a stack of business cards in our desk that we keep thinking, oh, I need to go email those people. And then weeks pass, then months pass, and then you throw the cards away at some point and you never converted these people into friends. And so this is as important as creating that connection is carrying it forward into a real relationship. And that starts with a future. So this, honestly, right here, this formula is quite possibly the most brilliant thing I ever came up with. And I don't even remember how I did it. I just was thinking to myself, it's really a problem that I meet all these great people and then I'm too embarrassed to email them, or I'm worried that they won't remember me, or I don't know what to say when I go to email all those great people that I met at that networking event. And I realized that if the way to solve this problem is to create the next step before you say goodbye. So create a future with the people that you meet, that you want to talk to, that you want to carry forward into your professional network. Create a future before you say goodbye. And all you need is two pieces. You need a way to contact them. And that's the easy part, right? You need their business card, or you need their permission to connect on LinkedIn. You just tell them that you're going to do that. So that's the easy part. But the second part is really essential. You need a context for the next step. So in other words, instead of just saying, I'm going to connect with you on LinkedIn, you want to say, I'd love to speak with you for 15 minutes about your work. Would it be all right if I contact you on LinkedIn in the next week to schedule a call? Or you can make an offer. I'll forward you the article we spoke about. Or you can make a connection. I'd love to introduce you to my friend who's interested in your company. I'll send you an email next week. So before you say goodbye, don't just get their contact information. Create a specific opportunity to follow up with them that's relevant to whatever you've been speaking about, to the conversation that you've had, and to your goals. It's perfectly okay to ask them for an informational interview before you say goodbye during your first meeting. And in fact, if you do it this way, then they're going to be expecting to hear from you, and most likely they'll be happy to hear from you because you're doing what you said. So this is a really valuable tool. I encourage all of you guys to use this. It's going to make such a difference, because typically if you get the card, if you get someone's card or their LinkedIn and then you don't take an action, where it goes wrong is in that in between, in that ambiguity of what should I say? What do I say to keep this thing going? Well, say it before you say goodbye so that there's no confusion about what your next step is going to be. This is going to change your life. It definitely changed mine. All right. And then now that you've got a future, so let's say you decided to follow up with them in a week, or you forwarded them an article, you did whatever you said you were going to do for the future. How do you carry it forward from there into, like, how do you convert this into a friendship instead of just a loose networking contact? Well, the first thing you need to understand is that true friendship blossoms over time. This is not news. You know this. The people that are closest to you are typically the people that you've known longer and with whom you have more shared experiences. So real professional friendships need time to blossom. I'll just give you a quick example. I met someone 10 years ago. I was introduced to him by a former client, and we stayed in contact for 3 or 4 years before we ever started talking about working together. And now we collaborate on all kinds of different projects. We hang out sometimes personally, like we're really, really good friends. But that is something that unfolded over a period of 10 years. And in the first 2 or 3 years, all we were doing was, saying hi and updating each other on what we were doing. So this is pretty typical. And this is actually perfectly fine, because it's 5 or 10 years later that you're really going to need these friends. Your first job post-MBA, you're going to need relationships to get that job, but recruiting on campus makes it a lot easier than that second or third transition you're going to make when you don't have the support of career services or your whole MBA network behind you to make that change. So you want to look to sow seeds and really nurture them over time. And there's a lot of different ways you can do that. An informational interview is a really great way to start a friendship, to go from hello to getting to know them better. And for this one, I do have a blog post ready to go on this one that I'm going to share with you guys. So if you go to my, if you go to the Career Protocol blog, I have this really great blog post on informational interviews with a guide that you can download. And that I just pasted in the chat box there. So check that out if you like. This is a really useful tool as you're building relationships, especially these next few months before you get to campus. And then whatever happens, whatever your second step is, always, always, always follow up. So whenever you have an interaction with someone that contributes to you in any way, always follow up with a thank you. So did they give you feedback that you implemented? Maybe they gave you a piece of advice that was helpful to you. Maybe they set an example and you kind of copied them in your day-to-day life. Maybe they introduced you to someone, or they recommended you for something. Or maybe you were just thinking of them. Maybe they said something to you, and 3 weeks later you were reading an article that reminded you of what they had said. Always let them know. Okay, so if you have a reason to be grateful or to appreciate someone, always follow up with a thank you. The art of the thank you note is a really big deal in the professional world. But in any case, follow up with people who provide any meaning to your life. So here's a really quick exercise you can do. And I'm just going to give this to you now, but I encourage you guys to do this. The webinar is going to be over in about 15 minutes or so. I encourage you to take 10 minutes and actually do this exercise at the end. So jot down a list of everyone you can think of who has helped you in your career. And then circle the people that you haven't spoken with in the last 3 months that are on that list. For anyone you circled, drop them a line and express your appreciation. Just send them a quick thank you. You can say something like this. Hey, I was in a webinar about building relationships, and one of the things they told us to do was to send a thank you note. And you know what? I have so much to be grateful to you for. I couldn't wait to email you because you helped me with this and that and the other thing. And I just wanted to say hello, and I was thinking of you. Anyone in your life would be overjoyed to get an email like that. So, part of nurturing relationships is sustaining them over time. And it's not, there's giving and there's receiving. There's always going to be giving and receiving in friendships. But the one thing that you can always do that will move it forward a step is expressing your appreciation. So this is a thank you note tip that I recommend you guys do today, literally, as soon as the webinar is over. And here's a quote from Ralph Marston. Make it a habit to tell people thank you, to express your appreciation sincerely and without the expectation of anything in return. Truly appreciate those around you, and you'll soon find many others around you. I'm just going to leave this at this. This quote really is true, and it says it all. All right. And then you're probably going to also want to have a keep in touch strategy. So you're going to want to have a plan to keep in touch with everyone you're meeting now as you're beginning to build relationships pre-MBA, and then with your recruiting contacts during your MBA, and then also with your MBA friends. I mean, you're going to be making so many new friends in the next 6 months. So I recommend that you have a plan, and I recommend that you leverage technology to do some of this work for you. Here are two software systems, two software as service that I really like: Follow Up Then and Boomerang. You can set these up in your inbox. It triggers reminders. It can remind you to contact someone, to follow up with someone. All you need to do is set the reminder for 3 months or 6 months or a year or whatever feels like the appropriate timeline for a given friendship. And, these tools will do it for you all in your own inbox. There's a lot of other tools out there. Some people use spreadsheets. I have a spreadsheet that I share with people who do YOMO, but whatever you do, have a plan and then use technology to help you continue to follow up with people and not lose the thread of these relationships as you go. So here's some Monday morning actions. Get back in touch with important professional friends. Show your appreciation for at least 10 professional contacts this week, prioritizing the people that you haven't spoken with in 3 months or more. And then get your inbox keep in touch ready using one of those tools or whatever other tools you come across. If you take a little bit of time to lay this pipeline now, it'll become like second nature by the time you get to business school. And that's going to make it a lot easier for you to maintain your relationships even under the duress of the amazing MBA program. All right, so now let me give you some really tactical advice for this event that's coming up just in another month here in New York. So, this event, and, kudos to those of you who are going to this event. I think it's an amazing event. I'm not going to be there, unfortunately, this year, but I've been there in the past, and I just think it's a really great way to kick off your MBA recruiting experience. So if you're listening and you haven't registered, I think there's still a possibility that you can get into this event. So really think about it if you're not already on the guest list. But really, for any professional conference, for any event where you're going to be in contact with dozens, if not hundreds of people that could become meaningful professional contacts, I recommend that you take a few steps in advance of the event to really make the most of it. So you want to set some goals. For example, with whom do you want to connect? For that event, for the networking festival, you know which companies are going to be there. So decide which companies are the most important ones for you to connect with. Think about, what do you want to learn? What do you want to learn about the companies you're networking with? If you have a choice among different training or panel events that you can attend at a given conference, not so much the Poets and Quants one, but you will have to make some choices there. So what do you want to learn? What do you want to prioritize in terms of your own experience? And then what opportunities do you want to create? So, for example, do you want to set up 3 or 4 informational interviews with firms that you are potentially interested in? That would be a really great set of opportunities to create. Be intentional about what you hope to get out of it. Don't just kind of go with the flow. And this way you'll be sure to reap the most value from the experience. I tend to recommend that you have business cards. This advice is becoming more and more obsolete. But I always think it's a really good idea still to be able to hand over a business card, because the most senior people that you're going to meet will likely still be in the business card paradigm. So these are very easy to make if you don't have one already. Some schools will provide them eventually, but you can always get a business card made. I also recommend that you take a little bit of time to refresh your LinkedIn profile. Here are some quick hits, some quick things that you can do. Get a professional looking photo if you don't have one already. Make sure that your summary is up to date. So, not something that correlates to the job you were looking for 2 years ago, but something that really reflects where you are right now. Get a vanity URL. I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And then make sure that your past companies show their logo. So the vanity URL is here. So here's mine. It's linkedin.com/in/Angela is awesome. And I chose this because by the time I realized I could do this, someone had already taken my first name, last name, but this one's actually even more memorable. So this actually worked out pretty well. You can set this on your profile page. There's actually a link. It looks different now. It used to be here. Now it's on the right side of the page. It says edit your profile URL. So that's a really easy thing that you can do. And it's helpful because then you can just tell someone what you are on LinkedIn. You don't have to actually, send them the link. So do this. And then the other thing you want to do is make sure, and for some of you, this is probably already working for you, but if you didn't take the time to find your employer when you set up your employment at a given company, then the logo won't show up here. So, it's important that as I look at your LinkedIn, I can scroll down and see the brands of the companies that you've worked for, even if they're small companies. So make sure you go through this extra step when you might need to edit the employer and make sure that you find the LinkedIn registered entity that you work for so that the logo shows up. But this will take you 5 minutes. If you do everything I just said here, it'll take you 5 minutes to update it, and it'll give you a lot more confidence as you go into these networking events because you won't be worried about making a bad impression with your LinkedIn. And then one last thing for this event is a quote from Oscar Wilde: "You can never be overdressed or overeducated." Since you guys are beginning to trod the path towards overeducation, I recommend that you never be concerned about being overdressed, and really more specifically for this event, wear a suit. So as you're going to the Poets and Quants Networking Festival, the Poets and Quants team recommends that you wear a suit. Look sharp. This is a chance to meet some of the most important employers that will recruit at your school. So be sure to look sharp. So let's recap. This is not the time to build your network when you're desperate for a job. Focus on making genuine human connections, not selling yourself. Give the connection a future. When you meet someone, make sure that there's a next step that you're walking into so that following up is easy and natural for both of you. And then just be a good person. I mean, this is pretty obvious, but just be generous. Be someone who share your network, share your information, share your contacts, reach out to people, say thank you. If you work hard to be a good person, the world will be good to you. Those of you who've practiced this know exactly what I'm talking about. So let me say a couple of quick words about YOMO for those of you who are interested, and then I'm going to take all of your questions. So here's what we've covered today. And, there's just really a ton more that you could be learning about actively managing your career to maximize what you get out of it. So here's some opportunities that are coming up. So this is actually my second book. It's called How to Network Without Feeling Like an A-Hole. And this book is coming out sometime in the next couple of months. So if you want to get notification of this and even join the launch team for this book and help me make it a success, you're going to want to do the thing I'm going to tell you next, which is to download the Career Game Plan Workbook for YOMO. And YOMO exists because what you don't know about MBA recruiting could get you here. So some percent of MBAs from all the top schools don't get a job by the time they graduate, and some of them don't even get one by 3 months out. It's not likely that you'll be in this category. What's much more likely is that you'll get a job. It just won't be the one that you really want. You're going to end up cramming yourself into something that's easy or attainable, but it's not the job that you truly, really want, not the one that you went to business school to get to transform your career. So October is really not the time to build your network. I've given you that advice already today, and I've given you a ton of tips as to how to get it rolling now. But this is also not the time to figure out which internship you want. So this is where you only MBA once. In other words, YOMO, you only MBA once, comes into the picture. And this is a self-guided course. It's actually like a little bit of an experiential learning adventure, but it's going to take you through all of the 4 pillars of work-life success, and actually not just give you new tools and deeper tools akin to the ones we talked about today, but it's actually going to get you in action, accountable, and taking steps to get yourself ready for MBA recruiting now, so that by the time you get to campus, you've already laid the groundwork, you've already made some key decisions, you're confident about the choices you've already made, and you're prepared to make the choices that are coming at you very, very fast, so that you're able to not just succeed in recruiting, but also enjoy your MBA, which is really important. So I want to share with you guys a tool from the YOMO course, and this is available for download right now. It's free, and it will take you through a couple of steps to begin to discern what's most important to you in recruiting, and what are some of the values and strengths that you're bringing to the table that are going to help you succeed in recruiting. So I'm putting the link also in the chat box. You can just click the link that I put in the chat box, or you can go to careerprotocol.com/YOMO and download the workbook. It's going to walk you through the steps of being a long-term visionary and a short-term pragmatist. In other words, thinking about the big impact and the big growth that you want to have in your career, while also thinking about the day-to-day of your very next job and what's important. It's going to walk you through creating a long-term wish list, medium-term goals, and short-term tactics. It'll help you really nail down the industries and functions that you should be targeting for business school, as well as getting you up to speed on how deep your knowledge needs to be in the jobs that you ultimately target for your internship and your full-time job. So go download this workbook now. This will get you started on some of these exercises. And then if you do that, you'll also get notification as soon as the YOMO course is open for the year, which should be in the next month. So if you're interested in a systematic and easy to follow process to plan for MBA recruiting, then you definitely are going to want to check out YOMO. We go through all these pieces. There's training, videos, workbooks, exercises. It's pretty foolproof. And the students who've taken this course in the past said it made a huge difference in their ability to get the job that they wanted coming out of business school. So go download your career game plan today and join the YOMO VIP waitlist. That will also set you up to get notifications when the book comes out, How to Network Without Feeling Like an A-hole. So basically, you'll just hear all of the good stuff we have coming if you go here. So these are really your 2 best strategies right now. It's to begin laying the groundwork for recruiting, to make some decisions, to begin crafting your message and your awareness of what you really want, and then go to this networking festival in New York. It's gonna be awesome. So yeah, what questions do you have? We have several minutes here. Oh, well, we don't actually, I used up all the time, but but I'll stay and take questions. I'll stay and take questions if you guys have any questions. So type them in the chat box or in the Q&A box. I am happy to answer any questions you guys have. Okay, so here's a good one. What's the best way to talk about yourself if you've been out of work for a while? So A rule of thumb here is that you always want to call people's attention to what you want to see. So you can use the introduction framework that I shared with you, talking about things you love, things you're passionate about, things you're curious about, but just put a little more emphasis on the present and the future. So put a little more emphasis on what you're studying in business school and what you're excited about in business school, and then what you're looking forward to in the future about that thing. And as you talk about the past, you won't necessarily say, right now in my job I'm doing XYZ, because you're not working now. Instead, you'll reference things that you have done in the past, and it doesn't have to refer to any specific time zone. So this way you can talk about still the same passions, just in a kind of like non-time, so that it doesn't necessarily bring up the question of what you're doing right now. That's something that will come up later in interviews, but it doesn't need to be a part of a networking interaction. Okay. Any thoughts on a pre-MBA internship, or how best to prepare to start school a couple months beforehand? So pre-MBA internships are great, especially if you are going into a field that is entrepreneurial, startup oriented, nonprofit, a place where you're going to need a bit of a network, and the experience is very, very different from what you've been doing before. Those are the cases where definitely pre-MBA internships are super, super useful. And I think if you have time to do that, then you can do you can do that. The thing about YOMO, the class I'm talking about here, is that it's designed to answer this second part of your question, which is how to best prepare to start school and to get ready for the MBA. That's what YOMO is designed for. But the bottom line is you need to be really answering some tough questions about what you want to do for your internship. You need to be talking to people and building relationships in the kinds of companies, the kinds of jobs that you want to have. And you need to be preparing yourself to make efficient and good use of the school's resources to support your recruiting process once you get to campus. Those are the other things you should be doing right now. And the truth is, it's a bit of a black box. That's why I made the YOMO class, because year after year, my clients would get into business school and then they would just show up on campus in September or August, not having done anything, and get totally broadsided by recruiting. So that's the whole point of that class. So definitely consider it. If you are wanting to get a jump start on things, definitely go download that workbook and then pay attention to the emails that you get about YOMO. How does one really differentiate themselves when everyone is out there networking, assuming everyone follows the framework I described? Good question. The answer is, do not differentiate yourself. Don't. The time to differentiate yourself is not at a networking event, because the truth is, if you are very memorable after a networking event, I promise you it's not for a good reason. So the way to approach networking events is not to differentiate yourself. Rather, it's to make a genuine human connection. The time you'll differentiate yourself is much later, when you're in a job interview or when you're having a more intimate conversation and you can share more rich details about your life. That's when you'll begin to differentiate yourself. But the networking event is really not the time to do that. And in fact, if you approach a networking event with the goal of differentiating yourself, you're going to be not well liked, I promise. Okay, everybody, that's it. Thank you so much for joining. If you're going to the networking festival, have a great time. I'm sorry I can't be there with you, but be sure to take this opportunity to make genuine professional friendships with the people you meet. And if you decided to download the Career Game Plan Workbook at this link here, careerprotocol.com/YOMO, and you use any of my tools from today, please drop me a line and let me know how it goes. I would love to hear how useful or not useful you find these tips as you seek to build your network of real professional friends through your MBA. Good luck, and thanks for joining.